and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses Show.
Don't touch that
This is the #1 podcast for real estate investing, and each episode covers what you need to know to find and flip deals right now.
Wow!
Break free of the chains that are holding you back and join us on today's episode.
So we are recording. I'll just do a quick intro for us. 3, 2, 1. Hey, what's going on? It's Jason Lucchese, and welcome to this special edition video that we're doing for our brand new book, Flipping Out Over Probates. You can get your copy right now, flippingoutoverprobates.com. It's $21.95. All of the profits are going towards two charities, Kids Beat Cancer and Veterans Best Friend Indiana. And on today's episode that we have, this is, again, a special edition with the No Flipping Excuses podcast. A returning guest, my attorney, Mr. Matthew Griffith, who has a chapter in the book. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing well, thanks. Probably the best chapter in the book. Wouldn't you agree?
It's gotta be. It's gotta be. It's awesome. It's awesome. So, you know,
people might want to just skip to what chapter am I? 10?
You are chapter 2.
2.
You're right there.
Skip chapter 1, go straight to chapter 2, and then come back and read chapter 1 later.
Yeah, chapter 2, forms of property ownership.
There you go.
So Matt's got a really good chapter in the book, and normally I've had, this is my third book, and the two other books I didn't really have anybody on there, but I felt that I needed to have Matt on here because there's a lot of legal stuff that I can't address that Matt can because he's obviously an attorney. But it's a really, the book. Let's talk first of all, Matt, about probates. For folks that aren't familiar with probates, I'm just going to ask you a real basic question here first to get the ball rolling. Do you think probates are a good source for people like investors to, go and get started with them at some capacity with being able to reach out to executors, descendants, whomever is the individual that's in line after somebody passes? Do you think that's a good source?
Yes, but your question's interesting because it kind of alludes to things we talk about in chapter 2, which is probate technically is a court process.
Right.
And when someone dies, there's going to be a change in ownership one way or another. And not all real estate owned by someone who dies goes to probate. So there are lots of ways that when someone passes away, a property is going to transfer in ownership. And it's not necessarily through a court order. So that's kind of the purpose of that chapter, is to broaden people's perspective and understand that when we say probate, that can be a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah.
It's a broad category. In other words, there are lots of places to acquire property or lots of different mechanisms to acquire property when someone passes away.
Yeah, and that's why I definitely wanted you to come on and do a chapter in the book, because a lot of folks feel like there's probate training programs out there. You and I know them, Matt. They're out there, and they talk just mainly about probate. And there's a deeper dive to it. Probate's just one avenue. There's so many different avenues about that, and let's kind of touch on that. Especially within the book that talks about that. Because folks normally go through attorneys, and they don't always go through the probate process, which is a court process. So let's talk about those other avenues.
Okay. So there are many. There are many, actually. So as you were talking, it just dawned on me, if I were to die tomorrow, all of my real estate would not go directly to probate because I don't own any real estate except my own personal home with my wife. All of my properties are in a limited liability entity. They're either in an LLC or a series under a series LLC.
Yep.
So let's just say they're all in an LLC. So right there, you can't simply peruse the obituaries alone and think you're going to catch every property that's going to pass when someone dies.
Right.
So if I die tomorrow, my interests in the LLCs that own real estate have to be taken care of one way or another. And in my case, my wife is going to get all of those LLCs. She's not going to want them. That's not what she does. She's going to want to liquidate all of my real estate holdings, take the cash, and do something else with it. So, right, she'd probably take the cash and put it in some type of long-term investment. She may go buy stocks or something and just hold the money.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the position I'm in. I don't really have any debt. So that's what she would do. Well, she's really not going to want those properties because she doesn't want to manage them. So that's a great example of a property that's going to pass not directly through my name because of my obituary. So knowing lawyers that do estate work, and if they know that you're an easy buyer and it's an easy mechanism to transfer property to you, no matter how the person held the interest in real estate at the time of death, then you can work out a deal with them. If they want to sell, so like again, in my personal case, my wife would want to sell the real estate. She'd want to get rid of it. So my trustee could work with the buyer and get those properties over to a buyer and do it quickly without all the hassle of resolving, fixing them up if they're not fixed up, or I do some new construction, so she wouldn't have to deal with that. The rental properties are already under contract, so she literally could just sell the property out of the LLC, and an attorney handling the estate would help her do that.
Gotcha. And a lot of folks, I don't think understand that. They do the obituary thing. They'll go down to the county recorder's office and look at recently filed probates. And I don't think they're really understanding that, folks that set up their estates, a certain way don't always go through probate. So, one of the things, I know we talk about it in the book, but what would you say for like an investor that's actually doing the business, and not just somebody that, may not really know what they're doing? But if let's just say somebody were to come to somebody like an attorney that really sets up wills, trusts, estate planning, and maybe they wanted to let them know, hey, I can help you out with, people that are looking to liquidate their properties pretty quickly if they're going through a process to where maybe mom, dad passed away. What would you say is a really good approach to that?
Well, I harken back to the old expression, get rich in the niche. Okay, so if you're serious about doing, let's call it probate properties, but we've already discussed that's very broad.
Right.
The key source in Indiana, and in most states, is the estate planning lawyer that also handles the estate part of it.
Right.
So they do the planning on the back end, but they also do with the trust administration and the probate work. So if you get to know those, lawyers and become the expert in the field to them. So I would send them, if not a monthly, a quarterly newsletter with a testimonial and an example of how you bought a property out of probate, you got it sold, and you made it really easy. Maybe get some quotes from other lawyers that says, oh, the process was easy, it benefited my client, we saved broker fees, the process was quick and smooth, this buyer was a professional, it was great. And can you imagine, you have a one-page flyer, it could be an email newsletter, and you send it to every probate lawyer in town, and they keep getting this thing, right, over and over and over, month after month after month. They get this flyer showing different deals that you're closing. After a while, the probate lawyer says to himself, I probably should contact these guys. This makes my life a lot easier because I can just turn my client onto this guy, and this guy will find a buyer for the property, and we avoid all the hassle. We can get this done quickly. What a great deal. And also, real estate investors can be more creative, frankly, than brokers can. What do brokers do? They broker deals. So they put it on the MLS, right? They put it on the multiple list, and they wait for a buyer to come along. But sometimes you have deals on probate that it's difficult to get rid of the property. So for example, we had a case one time where the property was under contract. It was a terrible contract, but we were under a land contract. The woman that owned it died. She wanted the proceeds to go to her son to fund his college education. He was young. I think he was like 14, something like that. Yeah, when she died. And we had to figure out, how did we get the value over to mom? Nobody wanted to buy this place because it was under this crazy land contract. So we ended up having to find a real estate investor that was willing to take on that deal, understanding that the land contract was a long-term deal. We couldn't just go out and list it.
And that's what you talk about that in the chapter about land contracts. And that's really important because a lot of people really don't know that. So, right here, I was actually just looking at that as you're talking about it, because we talk about, land trust. We talk about intestate, last will. Well, you talk about it, not me. And it's a really, that chapter is really, really powerful, because you don't really have, a lot of people don't have access to an attorney like I do with you, because we're friends, you're investor friendly, and you actually invest yourself. So, having you on here was like a complete no-brainer. It's on page 45 where we talk about it right here. And it's just, there's so many different things in your chapter that you talk about that a lot of people probably would have no idea.
Yeah. So when you gave me the book to review many months ago, 9 months ago, and I was reading it, it dawned on me that was the topic that was missing, is the variety of ways. So you and I talked about this many, many times. My philosophy in terms of real estate investing is that you need to understand how to block and tackle. So a lot of real estate educators only teach investors how to do a certain program or process, right? So it's this, they give you a book of forms, they give you some education, and they tell you, well, this is the way you do it every single time, right? And so investors follow those instructions, and they really don't know the basics of what they're doing. They don't understand the impact of a particular document. So when they pick up a quitclaim deed versus a warranty deed, they have no idea the difference between them. It doesn't even dawn on them. They don't think about it. They don't consider the impact. I think that's a terrible, terrible way to be a real estate professional. I think that you got to know, if you were a craftsman, you got to know the difference between a chop saw and a compound miter saw and a jigsaw. You got to know what your tools do, because if you don't, you're going to cut your leg off.
Yeah.
And right, you're going to
Nobody wants a leg cut off.
No, who wants that? That makes for a terrible day.
That's an awful day.
That's a bad day.
It's real bad.
So as the song goes, you're having a bad day. Yeah, I think that you got to understand the basics. And if you understand the basics, right? What's a deed? What's a contract? What's a lease? What's this? What's that? You understand those components, then you can identify opportunities and avoid mistakes. But if you don't know the difference between one saw and another saw, and you have no basic training in carpentry, you're going to cut your leg off.
Yeah.
And in our world, that means you do a bad deal that sets you back. So, and I've also often said this. So doing a bad real estate deal means this. So you do a bad deal and you lose $10,000, right? Let's just say you lose $10,000. You wasted all the time. Well, A, you lose $10,000. B, or number two, you wasted all the time that you spent doing a bad deal to lose $10,000, right? Now you got to do another deal to break even. You got to go make $20,000 to make up. Actually, do one more deal and make $10,000. Now you're back to zero. Right. So now you've done two deals. You've wasted all that time, all that energy, all that stress. And where are you? You're at zero. You're back to where you were at the very beginning, right? All that work for nothing. On the other hand, if you do every deal well and you make money on every deal, you don't have to worry about doing two deals to get back to even.
Right.
Now think about this. In that same scenario, let's say you do a third deal and you make $10,000. Now you've done 3 deals to make the profit you anticipated on 1 deal.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
you
the
don't
other
know
thing
what
too,
you're
Matt,
doing, what's that?
the one thing that I want to bring up too is a lot of people don't talk about this, but on those 2 deals you're talking about, especially the first one, if you screwed up with maybe a relationship with somebody, the community as a real estate investor or real estate in general is so small that it could really kind of ruin somebody's name, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it hurts. Doesn't help.
Right.
So, yeah, if you hurt other people, it gets even worse. Right? Because, yeah, word does get around.
Yep.
So, I mean, I've had contractors I've heard about, hey, you ought to hire this guy. And I'd say, hell no, I know that guy. There's no way. I'm not coming near him. There's no way. I know who that guy is. I'm not doing business with him. I've
Right.
walked away from deals because of the players involved.
And that happens. Word gets around somebody, maybe they don't know what they're doing and they always lose money. Like, I wouldn't want to be involved with them. I don't want to, again, spend time on something that's going to end up losing money.
So the other analogy I use is if you're just following somebody's program blindly and you don't read, for example, chapter 2 of your book and you understand the basics, right?
That's
Then you're playing checkers. Well, checkers is a kid's game. I play chess because chess is a more sophisticated, it's an adult game, and chess requires you to think many steps ahead.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you have to understand the basics. You have to understand how a pawn moves,
Yep.
how the queen moves, how the bishop moves. If you don't know those things, go play checkers. Better yet, go play marbles because you shouldn't be in the game at all, right? Get out of the game.
Or at least Tetris.
Do something else, but don't. I dealt with a contractor. I had a general contractor on a couple of deals, and I felt like I was teaching him how to build a house.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so after doing a few deals, I finally got away from him. And I thought back on that experience, right? He had done some small deals and had done pretty well. He just couldn't handle the big deals. And he had problems in his personal life and all that, right? And I thought, why am I teaching this guy his job? Right? Why am I? And then I thought, and I said this to him one day, I said, if you don't know what you're doing, not only are you going to get hurt,
Right.
but you're going to hurt other people.
Exactly.
And if you're going to hurt other people, man, you really shouldn't be in the business. Because if anything you do in life, if you have to hurt other people to do it, I believe in karma, man. That's going to come back and haunt you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Givers gain. Do good work. Every deal should be a win-win. Everybody wins, right? There's no reason that everybody goes around poking each other's eye out, right? And if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to not only hurt yourself and your family and your finances and your reputation, but you're going to hurt somebody else. And that's not cool.
Right. No, I agree with you 100%. And that's why, literally this book is something, it's not just like a guide. It's really a training. We put a lot into it, and it's not even that long. And you can see the font's not really big. Okay. This is a read you could get through in a day. And I believe with all the resources and everything, we're at 173 pages, and the last page is Matt's disclaimer. It's Matt's disclaimer. Now, one thing that I wanted to ask you too, Matt, is because there's another component here that a lot of people don't really realize, and this is something I've only shared with a number of students, and that's when somebody passes away, like maybe a husband passes away, and the spouse is their surviving spouse. A lot of people don't realize that could be an opportunity for them to come in and help. And I'm all about being able to come in and be somebody that helps, comes in more from like that helpful standpoint instead of like, hey, I'm gonna pounce on this person so I could get as much money as possible.
Okay, so take me again for example.
Yeah.
I have a 6,000 plus, like 6,500 square foot house, an acre of land, I have 4 garage bays. I need a 5th garage bay because I have another car. Because I like hot rod cars, so I have some hot rods. I have 1 daughter in college. I'll have another daughter in college in a year. And if I died in 2 years, it would be my wife and my 12-year-old son. They don't need all that maintenance headache.
Right.
So if I died, chances are my wife is going to sell that house. What does she need it for? I mean, right? Because our kids are getting to college age. Well, 2 of my kids are college age, or about to be college age. So they're going to be gone, right? They're not going to be, I mean, they come back and visit, of course.
Right.
But they're not living there. We just don't need that much room. I mean, we have a living room, a family room, a dining room, an office, right, and on and on. It's crazy. We don't need all that room. So she would, if I died, chances are she would sell that house.
Yeah.
She'd probably want to stay there a little while until my son got to the age where, where he wasn't missing the house, and changed real fast. It's hard on kids. But eventually she's going to sell that house. Well, if you know the probate lawyer, or that would be handling my estate or helping my wife handle my estate, there's potentially an opportunity.
Well, the other thing too is she would have to get you, she would have to get you quit claimed off of title, correct?
So there's so we own our house as husband and wife, and in Indiana, not all states, about a dozen states have a special form of ownership, joint ownership, called estates by the entireties. And you should check and see with a local lawyer if you have that in your state. So if you own your house as husband and wife, then what happens is when one spouse dies, it automatically goes to the other. But how's the government know? How's the recorder's office know that ownership has changed? Well, you record a document called the survivor's affidavit, or affidavit of survivorship, that explains kind of the history of the ownership. It's a simple form. You fill out some blanks, you file it with the county recorder, and that effectuates the transfer. Actually, the transfer is automatic upon my death, but that tells the world that the property transferred to my wife.
So would that would be a way then for individuals to maybe reach out and see if the individual's wanting to sell the property?
That's the thing. Anytime someone dies, there's probably going to be a change in ownership.
Yep. And I don't really hear too many people doing that strategy, because again, spouses are normally left in a position, especially older folks, right? Like maybe they've been living in the house for 30, 40 years. It needs tons of updates. And the surviving spouse maybe doesn't want all that room anymore. They don't have the money to fix it up. Maybe they just want to go to a senior living facility. Well, and they just want to sell.
That's another point. So I think we talk about it in your book. So it may not simply be someone dies. It could be that there's just a change in the use of the property. There is a Medicare, Medicaid planning strategy where say an elderly person doesn't want to pay the government for their nursing home care.
Yeah.
They can turn the home into a rental property. Now, that strategy varies from state to state, and you really need an estate planning lawyer who understands that kind of planning.
Yeah.
But there is a strategy to turn the home into an investment property. So you could put it in, the owner could move into a nursing home, put their property in an LLC, and then turn around and sell it on contract to an investor, or lease it to an investor who sublets it to a residential tenant.
Yeah.
Well, so that opens up a whole nother opportunity. There's an industry of elder care advisors.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that.
So there are a bunch of folks, it's currently not a licensed industry, but they're just advisors. And they come in and they take a look at an elderly person, and they assess their needs, and they make recommendations. So 25 years ago, my grandparents were getting up there, and it was time to move them to a different facility because they really couldn't take care of the house.
Yeah.
They were having some mobility issues. My grandmother was losing her eyesight, so forth. So we needed to move them into a place where they didn't have to work at maintaining a house, right? And we hired a person, or my parents did, hired an advisor to come in and assess the situation and give us recommendations. And then she actually set up tours. My parents went on tours of different facilities to figure out what what a good strategy, a good solution for my grandparents would be. That's a big industry. You know, there's visiting nursing services. There's a whole bunch of folks out there who are touching people who own real estate.
Yep.
And those are opportunities. If you know all those people, you might be able to assist somebody in that type of planning.
Because, you know, obviously you remember Fran. My wife's mother passed a couple years now, but at their facility, a couple of things that I got familiar with is there is somebody there, an elder care advisor, that does help and talk to the folks. So because one of their main goals, especially, they want to make sure that they're having a life to where they can continue making payments at a lot of these facilities, because they can get expensive, right, Matt? Fran, because she was in memory care, it was about $4,000 a month. So we needed to make sure that that was properly taken care of for her every month. Luckily, Jamie was the power of attorney in that particular instance. But, we had somebody come up at one of our INREA meetings. He was an agent. And that's where I kind of, talked to him about this. This was a few years ago, probably like 3-4 years ago. And he was telling me about the whole elder care thing, that a lot of these folks need to sell their properties. They need to sell them. And a lot of them are just, a lot of the folks in these senior living facilities, a bulk majority of them need to get rid of them. And the power of attorneys want to get rid of them. I went to a property and it was sitting there vacant for 2 years. And the individual that left to go to the senior living facility was a hoarder. So there's little pathways to maneuver around the house, but nobody wanted to buy it because of all the garbage in the house. And as an investor, we look at that as a huge opportunity. And it ended up turning to be a really great deal for us. And the individual that was in the senior living facility, got to be able to get a huge chunk of money. They were able to go on a vacation.
It's a win-win.
Vacation. Yeah, it's a win. Win for everybody.
Yeah, win for everybody. So there's opportunities again, but you got to understand the blocking and tackling, and that takes us back to chapter 2. You got to understand the basics in order to identify the opportunities. If you don't understand the basics, you're never going to identify the opportunities.
Exactly. Make sure you guys head on over flippingoutoverprobates.com. That's going to take you to Amazon. It's not like a special page we have to where you're going to go through all these different funnels and we're going to ask you to buy this and that. It's just the book, $21.95, and all of the profits are going towards Beat Kids Cancer and Veterans Best Friend Indiana. We've got a lot of bests in there. So Veterans Best Friend Indiana, we're helping folks out here. And this book is truly, it's an amazing, not just a resource, but if you execute the strategies taught within this book, this is going to be a really great niche for you to get involved with. And before we go ahead and end things with Matt here, a couple of things that I just wanted to bring up is when you go through the book too, we are giving you marketing materials. So there's marketing materials that we have. So our yellow letters that we use, there's 4 of them, 4 documents that you get that we've used and perfected over the last 10 years. We've got a JV agreement that you can get only if you get the book though, because there's special links to where you go to those pages and you could download these absolutely for no charge. So a joint venture agreement. We've got an assignment contract. And again, these all need to be reviewed by your own attorney, right, Matt?
Absolutely.
Our
licensed in your state.
Agreement. What's that?
Licensed in your state.
Exactly. And that's what I put in the emails and also on the web pages. Make sure you go and get that all reviewed by your attorneys. Our purchase and sales agreement's really good. It's only 2 pages. The assignment contract's good. Now, for some of you that live in the state of Illinois, that's obviously a whole different deal. You can't do assignments anymore, but that's a totally different topic that we could probably have Matt come on and talk about. But are things going to be leaning more towards that way to where assignment contracts are being faded out? Possibly. But I think the easy solution to that is doing A to B, B to C transactions, and just using transactional funding for those. But Matt, is there any like parting or final words that you have for folks that are maybe thinking about getting the book?
I would encourage everybody who's thinking about getting the book to go get the book. It's only what, 21, 22 bucks.
Yeah.
And if you can't afford $22 investment in your own success, then you're not likely to be successful, and you should just get out of the business.
Yeah, it's
play marbles.
It's what, two or 3 days worth of whatever the drinks are at Starbucks, the Frappa Puppuccino or whatever.
Yeah.
With the extra whipped cream and sprinkles.
Maybe 2.5 drinks.
So yeah, it's 2.5 drinks. You get this book, and it's a big game changer. Matt's chapter in there, chapter 2, is really going to help open your eyes to things that other investors or educators out there that don't really teach this strategy, in my opinion, well.
Jason, chapter 2 is probably worth $19 in and of itself. That means you get the rest of the book, all the other chapters, for $3. What is that, like 28 cents a chapter?
Yes.
That's a deal. Who wouldn't pay 28 cents a chapter?
That is a big deal. And then we're also we've got the marketing materials, the contract stuff. It's all for free, no charge. I have it in the book, so you could go ahead and get it. And then we got a ton of resources too that you can use that we use within our business. And make sure, Matt, why don't you give some plugs for yourself? IndyBizLaw.com.
If you live in Indiana, go to myinrea.com, INREIA.com. You can find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. We do free webinars, and we do some physical meetings about 4 times a year. Well, actually, we meet multiple times a month in small groups.
Yeah. And
then we have larger meetings throughout the year. So if you're anywhere near central Indiana, you're more than welcome. If you're in Indiana, join us online. If you live in Indiana and you want some information about real estate, asset protection, and estate planning, you can go to my law firm website. I have 2, IndyBizLaw, INDYBIZLAW.com, IndyBizLaw.com, or IndianaVirtualLaw.com, which is my virtual law website where you can get legal forms cheap.
There's also some great downloads too. So, some really great stuff from an investing standpoint that Matt's got some free downloads on his websites as well. So make sure you head on over there, get those tools. Make sure you head on over to Flipping Out Over Probates as well. Flippingoutoverprobates.com. It redirects you right to the Amazon page. So again, $21.95. You can get a copy. It's in Kindle. Or if you want to get paperback, it's also in paperback version as well. The copy that I was just holding is obviously a paperback. So you can go out there, get that. Make sure you check out Matt's information. The INREA is awesome stuff. It's a great group, great community to be part of. Even if you're out of state, you could still join on the Facebook group, join those monthly meetings that are online. And if you want to come in for the 4 meetings that they have on a quarterly basis, awesome group of people that are part of that INREA group. But other than that, Matt, thanks for being a part of the book, and I appreciate your chapter. It's a powerful chapter, man. Really great stuff. Obviously, Matt thinks my stuff's only worth about $3 compared to his.
No, I said you can get your stuff for $3. I just said mine's worth at least 19.
Maybe well, 19. That means we're gonna have to do a price increase soon. So get your book at $21.95 before I bump it up to $50 because I'm definitely worth more than $3. But other than that,